Okay, we're going to get going. We're going to call the meeting to order at 7 p.m. We are still trying to connect one member, but I don't want to delay starting the meeting. I'm going to grant permission to Westwood Media to record. It's a recording only tonight because the planning board is holding a public hearing, and we can only have one public hearing being live streamed at the same time. So if any citizens hopefully want to see what our committee reports are, they will be able to watch it, hopefully tomorrow on Westwood Media. Does anybody else want to record? I don't see that. I want to welcome, obviously, our members. We clearly have a quorum. I also see that we have some town officials here. Tim, I see Tony here. I see Stephanie. I see all the way in the back, trying to stay out of view, our town administrator and Lemma. And then also, we have a former member with us who we are going to miss. He is running for planning board, and we want to wish him the best. My understanding is there are only two candidates running for two positions, so I will wish him the best. I think it's going to be the planning board's gain and the finance commission's loss. So in a short period of time, you've made a remarkable impact, so thank you. Let me do this. Let's stand up and do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we don't have, we have anybody? So
Seth hasn't got back.
Seth hasn't gone up, so let's do a roll call to start the meeting.
John Carey.
Here.
Jim Ferraro.
Here.
Lauren Fitzpatrick.
Here.
Mike Gay.
Here.
George Hertz.
Here.
George Laham.
Here.
George Maroun.
Here.
Chris Poreda.
Here.
And Alex Yale.
Present.
So Caitlyn Jurczak is out, and so is Kristina Patyjewicz.
Okay.
And Bill Bruce is running late. He said he'll be here in 5 to 10 minutes.
Okay, fine. I just want to make a couple of announcements. One, I have to recuse myself from participating in any potential warrant article dealing with Hale Reservation. Like Select Board member Gotti, that's due to where I live. He is an abutter to somebody at Hale Reservation. I'm an abutter to an abutter to an abutter to an abutter to an abutter, but I still fall under that same category. So in order to protect the integrity of any decision-making that this committee makes, and to protect the integrity of any decision that takes place at town meeting, I will recuse myself. The way we will handle that is Chris Poreda will probably make some comments on the potential warrant article tonight. I will step out of the room. When Chris is done, I will hopefully be allowed to come back into the room.
I promise I'll tell you.
Thank you. At our 26th public hearing, which is probably one of our most important meetings of the year, that's when we do our final deliberations, we get our final updates, and at the end we vote. At that point in time, Select Board member Gotti and myself will step out when the article is presented. We'll come back in when it's done. We'll also step out again when the FinCom does its deliberation and take its vote. That way, I think we've kept everything above board and complied with any of the state's ethics commission's concerns. So let me get that out of the way. A couple other announcements I want to make is we are at the 26th. We obviously will be making our final decision of the articles. I want members to think about which articles you will volunteer to write up, okay? And that's fairly important. And then obviously that weekend, Chris and Victoria and I only have about 4 days to get the entire book published. So I want you to think ahead of time which of the articles you're willing to write up. Also, subcommittee reports. Tonight, you're doing what we call the slide presentations, but we also need your write-ups done to include in the book, and that's something you should be able to do over the next week or so. So we're asking you, if you can, to get those done, let's say a week from today at the latest. To get those to Victoria so we can get those ready for publication into our report to the town meeting, okay? So with that, Chris, is there any? Yes.
Just a question about Sean. If Sean, until he's elected.
Once your signatures are certified, okay, and he's also being the very astute person he is, he's already submitted his resignation. Okay, so he submitted that to town clerk.
And George, just a quick question on as far as our write-ups, the write-ups are supposed to reflect the vote.
The write-ups on the articles will reflect the vote.
Yes.
And remember, the policy we have, if there's a clear unanimous vote, it's easy. But if there are several members who express concerns, we ask the person who writes that up to reflect it. If we, as a committee, feel that there was enough concern, we actually will do a minority report, okay?
Yeah.
Generally, what I do is if it's, anywhere above 3, I start thinking about maybe we should do a minority report. But we want the write-ups to reflect the thinking of this commission.
So my only question is if you're asking us to, is it different write-ups?
Different write-ups.
Okay,
All you're
sorry.
doing is taking your slide presentations tonight, okay, and you're putting those into, we don't put the slide decks into the book, you sort of have to convert it into, take a look at what we wrote up last year. And that's a good guidance, how you convert the slides into, it's basically an informational piece for town residents on what the subcommittees did, okay? With that, I think.
George, if I may too?
Yes.
What's the purpose of you stepping out? I mean, don't you want to be in the room to stay informed?
I just, to be careful, I'm not supposed to participate, be involved in it all. So just to make it totally clear to everybody, that's why I want to step out of the room.
Okay. I mean,
Select person Gotti does the same thing. I mean, he's supposed to step out, but unusual situation. And frankly, it's because of where I live, no more, no less.
No,
Yeah.
recusing is one thing, but I think leaving the room might be.
I know. I just want to play it so nobody can question us at all. I'm gonna
Okay.
take you.
That's fine.
Okay. Let me see, is there anything else I want? Oh, okay. The only thing I want to say is, look, I think the town has worked extremely hard this year to put together a budget in a very difficult situation. But part of our responsibility, I think, to town meeting is to make sure that when we go through the budgets, that if there are any areas that we are concerned about and we need to alert town meeting to, we need to do it. Number 2, if out of this we have a series of questions, and we'll discuss this at the end, if there are 3 or 4 or 5 things we want to get some additional information on, out of courtesy to the select board, school folks, what we'll do is put something in writing, which we will send to them. So when they come in front of us on the 26th, they can respond to any issues or concerns, okay? But I'm relying very heavily on you, especially when you do your subcommittee reports. Are there any areas of concern you need additional information on, or that you want the town meeting to be aware of, okay? And the last thing I'll say, I've had the chance to review the subcommittee reports, and I want to thank you. I know the amount of work that went into putting these together. I don't think people really understand how much time everybody puts in, but the reports are excellent. So I look forward to each of you presenting it to the committee and letting other committee meeting members see what you've done. So with that, who do we want to have go first? It looks like it'll be capital and long-range planning.
Do you want us to sit at the table or just?
You may sit wherever you want, Mr. Poreda, okay?
We choose to sit right here, unless you guys
Agreed.
want to go.
I think here is nice. This is a nice spot.
All right,
Actually, Victoria,
Chris,
yes.
do you want to lead the PowerPoint slide, or you want me to do it?
so Victoria, I had asked Victoria at the beginning, where should we present? And the chair would present at the podium, and then the subcommittee could either be there or here to answer questions. That way there you can.
All right, I will move to the podium, you guys stay put.
We're fully agreed.
Okay. We're learning as we go along. This is very good. Okay.
That means I have to stand up. Thank you, Mike. So, I was wrong, we are presenting from the podium. So can I move the slides?
Yes.
Yeah. All right, so the capital subcommittee, it met with the town administrator, finance director, fire chief, police chief, head of DPW, and the superintendent, and the school finance director. We reviewed their proposed capital articles, different from the operating budget. We discussed the financial policies, and this year the emphasis, I wanted more transparency in the titles of each project as it appears on the warrant. So if that didn't happen, then the burden falls on the write-up that we make for the town book to describe what it is, because as you see, some of them are not, I find, at least in my view, or sort of nondescript. And when you say, we want money for technology, well, what does that really mean? So as you can see that in the coming slides. So this is a good slide. It's not updated. Yeah, there we go. There we go. Now it's different on here than it is on there. That's all right. I can deal. This is a good slide because it shows an overview of what's going on. Let me make sure that I can see what I'm talking to. It compares what's requested for all capital projects, including borrowing this year, around $8.5 million. That compares, it's about the same. Last year it was just over, a tad over $9 million. But when you exclude the borrowing articles, that's the real comparator in my eyes. For this year, it's 3.8 approximately $1 million. And last year, it was quite a bit more, 5.1. So it's gone down. The capital requests have gone down by about 27%. And the pie chart I thought was a good visual because it shows you where our capital projects lie by department. I sort of pulled out all the different projects from whatever funding source and grouped them as I logically thought they would be grouped. As you can see, there's basically four different, it's pretty much evenly split between public safety, sewer, building maintenance, and schools. And a lot of what the schools are requesting is essentially building maintenance, but we kept it separate on the schools. I split out the library because I wanted to show the efforts that the town is continually trying to improve that resource that so many people in the town use. Let's see if I can go down. So this slide shows an overview of all the proposed capital projects for this year. And here we go. The two things I want to mention here is the municipal capital and the school capital. They're basically level funded from last year. Sewer, ambulance, and additional capital, those three warrant articles are significantly down from last year. In terms of the amount of money the town wants to spend from those accounts. That doesn't mean by any stretch of the imagination that the accounts didn't accumulate what the town expected. But that's, the amount requested in capital projects is down from last year. Let's see here. Looking at the municipal, now this presentation, this list of municipal projects is different than what you'll see in the warrant because I rearranged them by department. I thought it made more sense to do that. And a lot of what you see here, when we met with the town department heads, we wanted to get an idea of what was going on. So the first thing I want to mention is for vehicles. Both the DPW vehicles and the police vehicles. The town has a 5-year capital improvement plan. And in that capital improvement plan, vehicles fleets are on a scheduled replacement cycle. But that's not the be-all and end-all. That's just the starting point for each department head to look at, oh, this year X vehicle is supposed to be up for replacement. Well, let's take a look at that vehicle and see if it really needs to be replaced. And that's the process that the department heads go through. Also, the amount you see there for a particular vehicle, let's just take the DPW dump truck, for example, it says $90,000. Well, that's not necessarily how much we're gonna end up spending on that vehicle. We'll look around, the town will look around for any source it can, even used sources, but it doesn't want to spend more than that. So it's quite possible that that vehicle will cost less than $90,000. Let's hope so. IT is one of the situations where I said we need a little bit more transparency here. So end-use technology, what does that mean? It could mean both hardware or software for both networks and desktops. So it's basically all-inclusive. It could be just about anything in the technology realm. The library technology means it's something a little bit different. That's mostly for iPads that the patrons of the library will be able to check out. Plus, it goes beyond that. It's for upgrades to what the staff is using. So that's why that is on there as just IT technology. The media suite, that's year 2 of 2, I believe. Last year we spent as much money on the media suite for year one. Okay, for schools, the technology line here, Tim says it goes to Chromebook and laptop replacement, but also to other upgrades that are important within the whole school network. And the important thing Tim wants to make sure we all understand here is that just because a Chromebook is due for replacement, that doesn't mean we discard it. If it, we'll cherry pick the best ones that get turned in and keep them in reserve for sort of a stockpile of emergency replacements. So we're not getting rid of stuff that still works, essentially, is the message. The other accounts on the school end of things are these accounts that will accumulate until we have a project that needs to be done. And both on the municipal side and the school side, accounts like that are important because when a project needs to be done, the town needs to be able to go out and contract for it and get it done without having to wait till the next town meeting for approval. The furniture line in the schools, don't be misled by that. That's not furniture for the new Pine Hill School. In fact, all the furniture that came out of the old Hanlon School and the Deerfield School was carefully assessed and replaced older furniture at other schools, so it is being used. So the furniture you see at the new Pine Hill was part of the project. Sewer, we were told that the MS4 permit, which you see right now, is hang on a second. I'll use this one. $325,000. We might get a grant for some of that. We were told that $75,000 of that is Westwood's. The other $250,000 of that 325 is subject to a 60% grant from the state. So we might get some of that. And also, this is what I wrote down, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the MS4 permit may end up being a separate utility. And whether that translates into we all seeing an MS4 fee quarterly on our sewer bills, I don't know. But we'll watch for that. Did I get that right? Yeah, okay. The camera truck has a life expectancy of 15 to 20 years, to explain that, and that will aid in trying to find leaks and other problems with the system a lot quicker than what they have to do now. So moving on. Let's see here. Proposed capital, additional capital, the second proposed additional capital, with the meals and hotel tax revenue. We want to buy some backup generators, particularly from Wentworth Hall and the Council on Aging. And then at the high school pool, an issue has been identified that without a ceiling, and a lot of people in the pool, the level of noise interferes with the lifeguard's ability to communicate. So hopefully, putting in acoustic tiles of a material suitable for that environment, by the way, will cut down on the ambient noise, so it would be for improved safety, because the lifeguards will be able to tell people if there's an emergency and they need to act. On to the borrowing articles. Yeah, okay, right there. Couple of things I want to note. The $725,000 for the squad truck replacement, the history on that is, that's the truck that we were going to replace a couple years ago with the $400,000 borrowing authorization that we had to rescind at the special town meeting, because that particular truck that we wanted to buy is no longer on the market. So the acting chief went through and said, the squad truck still needs to be replaced, but let's go through and identify exactly what we need on that squad truck replacement. And again, the borrowing authority is $725,000, but we don't actually borrow that money until pretty soon, close to delivery. And how much it will actually cost will be determined by how much, so it may not be 725. Hopefully it will be less. But again, we won't actually borrow that money until pretty close to delivery. The high school roof restoration, and this is, the important point here is to say that this is not a replacement. We are not replacing the roof on the high school. We are restoring the roof. What does that mean? That means we want to repair areas that need repairing, and look at the rest of it and extend the life of that roof by decades. If this doesn't pass at town meeting, the need will still be there next year, and the year after, and the year after. The only consequence of not doing it sooner rather than later is that the cost is likely going to go up. Not only the cost of doing the actual restoration, but also now you're incurring costs because those areas that currently need repair will probably leak, causing damage below it, and you'll have to repair that damage as well. And the last item on borrowing authority, the Conant Road culvert. Honestly, I'm not entirely sure what the scope of that is. I drove by it this morning, and Rockbrook Creek, I think it is. I don't know exactly the name of the creek that runs on one side of Conant Road. But the sewer substation might be affected, and because of the rains last week, you could see the water level was quite high. In fact, some backyards were quite wet because of it. And the culvert itself, in my view, was acting more like a dam than a culvert. So you could really tell that it was holding back water, right? Was it last year we approved money for the design of a new culvert? And the description of that included some work on what was called Stevens Pond Dam, which is actually downriver or downstream from the culvert. So I'm not exactly sure what that has to do with the culvert. And this project was originally on the 5-year capital planning report for next fiscal year. But I understand that Todd may have found possibility of a 75% grant from the state. Again, if we authorize the borrowing at $1.5 million, we don't actually have to pay that or borrow that until the construction costs are due. And by that time, the grant may have kicked in. So the grant would cover 75% of the 1.5 million if we get it. There are a couple of items that don't appear on the warrant article, what was called holdbacks. And of interest is 2 Thurston projects, one a heating project and one a roof project, that the superintendent wants to hold until he sees the completed school facilities report, and then he'll determine whether or not to go forward with those projects. So, Jim or Lauren, any comments, questions?
Yeah, can I just expand on 2 points?
Absolutely. What do you want to go back to?
Additional capital right there, generator upgrades, replacement. That was a perfect example of you don't know what you need until you need it. We had some storms where the generators failed this year, and the police department and their 911 system was just moments away from failure due to the lack of generators. So we have to upgrade those. Additionally, the borrowing for the school roof restoration, I want to differentiate that from the roofing article under the school capital article. There's a roofing article for $250,000, and then the school borrowing for the high school roof of $2.5 million. So the high school roof has been leaking, and as Chris said, they want to extend the life of it. The borrowing of the $250,000 for the roofing is, and many of you have seen this every year, we don't want you to think that our roofs are totally dilapidated and every year we need repairs. The $250,000 for the roofing is, as Chris said, to set aside to accumulate over time so that they can make the necessary repairs or replacement of a larger scale project. That roofing fund has approximately $800,000 in it to date. But again, the idea is that they budget a little bit from the town every year, so when the time comes, they don't have to hit us for this $2.5 million, one-time hit. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's it.
That's it, Lauren?
Questions from other?
No, that explanation of the roofing though, because when we met with them, I wasn't so clear on it too. It's like, why do you keep needing? But then when it was explained, I'm like, okay, this makes sense, so.
Okay. Any other questions?
Just one quick one.
Alex?
Can we clarify that police patrol vehicle, I assume that's multiple vehicles for 285,000?
Yes, it's multiple vehicles.
So we should just throw an S on vehicles there, so we just know that there's multiple.
And there is an S on the warrant article itself. That was my fault for not putting the S there. Yeah, that would be some police vehicle.
That would be, yeah.
Bill, did you have a question?
Yeah, just for the benefit of folks watching, when you talked about the squad truck replacement as well as Conan Road, you mentioned how that's the maximum amount, and there could be situations where squad truck could be less, Conan Road we could get funded. What happens to the money when we don't?
Well, we only borrow what we need, right? So there is no excess money.
Right. And we only borrow it the year that we need it.
And we only borrow it when we take delivery of it, or pretty close to when we take delivery of it, yeah.
Thanks, Chris.
So I have a question for Chris and Lauren and Jim. We've separated capital from operating the last 2 years. Good process? Is it worthwhile to do it the way we do it? Any comments or suggestions for the future?
No, I think it works, and I think it's good to stay in communication with the town, because the 5-year capital plan is constantly changing.
Right.
So we should communicate with the town, be in communication with them, how their plan is developing for our budgeting
Good.
purposes.
Okay. Chris, any comments?
Yeah, the only thing I'd say is that I think in particular, the Conant Road culvert construction, I think that we should have been that should have been on somebody's radar when we met with the department heads, instead of coming up suddenly without having any background given to us on it.
But Chris, in terms of separating capital from operating budget,
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I think we should continue that.
okay. Well, once again, thank you all for a thorough.
John had a
Oh, I'm
question.
sorry.
Sean had a question.
John?
Just on the high school roof restoration, did we inquire about the cost of replacing the roof as opposed to restoring it? Just seems like $2.5 million is a kind of lot to restore a roof. On what I would assume is a 20-year-old.
We did, Jim is here now, can you give us, it was a substantially larger number.
It's been a while. I would say it was about 20 million.
$20 million? Okay.
It's been a while. I'd have to verify that. We
I-
consulted with a company that has been doing this work. And
Oh.
they felt that the roof was in strong enough condition that restoration was the right approach and would buy us another 30 years eventually.
Yeah, that's the point I wanted to make. Sitting through budget steering, that's the point, that spending $2.5 million to gain another 30 years of viability in the roof didn't seem to be, made a lot of sense to me. So hopefully it'll depend what we recommend, but if we do recommend it, hopefully the town will go forward with it.
And that roof is 20 years old now,
Right.
right?
Yeah. And the fascinating thing about the high school, you walk in it today and it still feels new. I mean, I think it's been beautifully maintained, and it's a credit to the town how that's been maintained, so let's take care of the roof. Okay,
One last question on the roof.
yes.
Is that amount depicted only reflective of repairing what's already there, or is it adding anything to it, like solar panels or other technology?
I don't think it includes the addition of any solar panels. Lemma, is that correct?
Doesn't include, there is no addition of solar panels, so we would have to remove existing panels, but we would work with Ameresco to do so. To remove them and then replace them again after the restoration.
Okay, so I wasn't totally aware of that. So there are solar panels on the roof now. They'd have to be displaced while the work was going on, then they'd be put back. But this doesn't include any new solar panels.
Does this include the removal and the
Yeah,
reinstallation?
yeah, that's the whole 9 yards.
Okay, any other questions for, well, thank you very, very much for a thorough job, and hopefully we will maintain focusing on the capital budget separately. So next, it looks like we have on our agenda, is it education?
I'm not gonna do that.
Yeah, you, wherever you're most comfortable.
Here.
Good topic.
No, thanks to you. Thank you.
Very nice job.
Absolutely.
Can I get my pay double?
Yes.
Whatever you're getting right now, you can double it.
All right, education. So I'll spend the next hour and 50 slides walking through, you know, we condensed things to focus on some of the key things we wanted you to see from an education committee standpoint. Seth and Caitlyn were part of the group as well. Caitlyn's sick. I think Seth's on the phone.
Yes.
So I'll handle everything, questions and all. And if I can't answer it, we have Tim and Leva in the room as well. But just a reminder on kind of how this process works. From a budget standpoint relative to the schools, you know, the school committee is the one that approves the school budget, right? So there's a process that they go through to evaluate the budget. There's a school committee hearing to go over it. They presented it, Tim and team presented it to us, I think a few weeks ago. You know, we met with Tim and Lemma to kind of walk through it, ask some of the questions we had as we saw the budget. And then the school committee accepted the budget back on February 8th. And then tonight, I'll just walk through kind of a high level of what's going on this year. So, little executive summary, we'll walk through, walking through the budget, hit on sped, and then we'll skip capital, since Chris already covered that, but that's also in here as well. So, just from a high level standpoint, you know, this isn't different than any other year. Salary salaries are the biggest driver in the budget. And those are all contract-driven salaries. It's the biggest part of the overall budget, and I have some graphics here in a minute to go through. But certainly a little more clarity this year as opposed to last year when we were going through the contract negotiation process. Some of the cost escalation areas this year, similar to last year, transportation costs, as well as special education, both non-salary as well as salary, and we'll get into that in a bit. So the budget for this year is at a 3.69% increase over fiscal year 24, which is a little less than the level service budget, which would be 3.77%. And so looking at the budget, you can see salaries, the biggest portion of the overall budget. And then you can see where some of the increases are in special education that are definitely impacting things. And how we get down at the bottom line from a $54.7 million budget in 24 to 56.8 in 2025. So that's where we get the $2 million change year over year, that 3.69%. And just kind of aligning with what we've seen the last 10 years here, you can see we usually end up in that, 3 to 4% range most years, a couple exceptions over the last 10 years, but this budget is in line with most of the last 8 years of budget years, except for last year. And then you can see 85% of that budget is dedicated to the salaries. You can see another nice graphic breaking down, where transportation 6, speds 4, and then we have a few other things. And then within that salary bucket, you can see 70% of it is the teachers, and then where some of the other areas fall as well. So in terms of the salaries, we have, and we'll break down the staffing changes in a minute, but a net increase of salaries, about 1.8 million. There is changes relative to the Pine Hill consolidation, and I have a slide in here in a couple slides in terms of 4 FTEs that total about 268,000 that offset the other staffing changes where we need an increase of 4.7. So the net effect is a net increase to non-salary accounts of 110. The total of FTE change is a little less than 1. And that's what kind of brings us to that $2 million change. And so on the next slide, we'll break down some of the staffing changes, which I know Tim talked through a few weeks ago. So you can see some changes relative to MS technology and instructional, some additional speech language pathologists and occupational therapists, additional special education assistants. Again, all of this aligning back to our overall district strategy and how we're trying to deploy the resources across all the schools for the kids. And this ties back to that prior slide where you saw those 4.7 FTE increase in terms of the existing staffing. And then if we look at the next slide, it breaks down the Pine Hill consolidation. And this is where you can see where some of those reductions were, leading in that 4.0 FTE change that I highlighted a few slides ago. There's a reduction in the Pine Hill assistant principal impacting things, some adjustments to administrative staff and substitute staff, adjustment of psychology, music teacher, art teacher, things that are getting consolidated as it moves to the new school. So overall, this is that 4.0 FTE reduction that I kind of highlighted on that summary page. So going beyond the staffing, just take a minute to talk a little bit about enrollment, because that's always a question. Yes, Mr. Laham.
Oh, since you're right on it, I wanted to ask a question. You talked about a decrease of 4 FTEs, and the principal is usually one of the higher paid people in staffing in the building. When you look at the slide 9 that you're talking about, the reduction of staff due to the consolidation, It doesn't talk about principals. With consolidating 2 schools, you gotta have an extra principal somewhere.
Do you want
I'm happy to address that.
Take
There
that
was
one.
one principal for both Sherfield and Hammond when the year started. We only had a total of 4 elementary principals.
So you had one principal that was doing double
We had
duty.
one principal and one assistant principal.
When was that reduction
It
realized?
was
2
taken in
years?
the FY '24 budget, in the current year budget.
Good answer, Bill, thanks.
You would have said exactly that, right?
That was
Exactly.
perfect.
I would have said that.
So, enrollment, I mean, no significant change relative to the high school or middle school from an enrollment standpoint. You know, but what we've definitely seen is elementary school enrollment has begun to rise. Increase of 72 students in the last 2 years, definitely impacting things. You know, and one of the big challenges is the use of the census data, which has really impacted our K forecasts. Usually in any given year, there's usually about a 20 kid difference in most years between the census and then what kids actually enroll. Last year it was 72. So that was 3 times what we normally see, which makes it challenging to use the census data from a kindergarten standpoint. So what's been done this year to be conservative and plan for that is to use the prior year's data as opposed to the census data to make sure we're forecasting appropriately given what occurred last year. So we've assumed level enrollment in fiscal year 25 from 24. And, you know, just a reminder, the number of classroom sections in each building really relies on our guidelines. You know, and you can see up there, 18 to 22 and K to 3, 18 to 24 and 4 and 5. And so obviously adhere to that across the 4 schools now. You know, so overall, there's really no net change in enrollment. It's really just a little shifting around of one section from Downey to Martha Jones based on where enrollment is.
Question you may not be able to answer, maybe Tim can. What is the current utilization at the elementary, middle, and high school levels in terms of ideal capacity of the building and the facilities of the teachers relative to enrolled students?
I'm assuming you're referring to that question.
Yeah, I think.
So, there's not a crystal clear answer to that question. That's one of the things the facility study will actually help address. We don't have a current identification we do for Pine Hill, but we don't for, say, Downey or MJ or Sheehan. And that's something that will come out of that national planning study. At Pine Hill, we currently have, 25 classrooms, 5 kindergarten classrooms, 4 classrooms in each of grades 1 through 5. All but 2 of those classrooms are used right now. We anticipate all but 1 of those classrooms will be used next year. And that was built with the designed increase in enrollment in line.
But speaking to the elementary level as a whole, middle is one school, high school is one school. Like, for example, is the high school at 72% capacity or 99% capacity?
We are crunched for space in buildings right now, and I think one of the reasons I can't answer that question with specificity is the nature of how, the last time we would have done a study like this a number of years ago, the nature of how education is delivered, how we need to use small group instruction, the number of additional adults providing things like mental health
That
services
surprises me.
take more space than they did before, which is why we need a modern, new analysis of capacity in buildings.
Okay. And is that study ongoing right now?
It is actually hitting the street tomorrow, I believe. And so that work is going to take place during the spring and summer, and will help inform next year's capital plan.
Okay.
That even helps out. I think at least during the peak enrollment, it was probably 200 to 300 more than we have across the district.
Okay.
I think it was under 3,000 a guy. I think it got up to the 3,200 and 3,300 at the very peak.
Okay. And the reason I'm asking, I think that answer in this study will help inform other, articles that we're seeing in terms of things like added stress on the schools or on, the police department, the fire department in terms of town services and offerings. And that's why I'm curious. So I wouldn't nail you on a number, just good to know that a better number might be coming.
Yeah, I will say anecdotally related to that. So, for example, we have not had an art class right now in the last couple of years. Art has been out of cards. We Pine Hill opening and a special education program moving from down to Pine Hill, that alleviates some of the pressures on that building. And it will fluctuate a little bit over time, as Tony just talked about, but it's gonna be good to have that analysis in a concrete format as part of this planning study.
Thank you.
Can I? You wanna go ahead?
I was just gonna piggyback Alex, that was something that came up 3 years ago when we did the, and this is to complement what you said. 3 years ago when the school was being proposed, one of the schools that is breaking at the seams was the Downey, and we asked how the Pine Hill project would help all the schools across the town, which I think is what you're getting at. Downey was alleviated by this project, so programs from Downey are going there, which alleviates space at the Downey. And another program, I believe at the Sheehan or Martha Jones, Star is, I think it's called the Star program, is going over to Pine Hill. So the Pine Hill alleviated the over-occupancy, for lack of better words, at the elementary school levels. And the high school, when I think Emily proposed it, was telling us that the high school capacity was like 1,200, and there's only like 900 kids in it. Is those numbers close?
I can't speak to the capacity. I mean, the enrollment right now is in 900-ish. But again, I think even with that, we are hurting for space based upon the way that services are delivered in a modern educational environment.
So I hope that helped.
Yeah, thank you.
It's better.
Is there another question? I'm 0 for 3 answering questions.
He doesn't need
This one's gonna be
it.
directly to
Do you wanna
Tim.
repeat all that, Tim?
So Tim, if I could, I'm gonna tackle my memory here. You gave us a presentation a few weeks ago, and you were talking about the elementary school enrollment, and there was the number 68. Was that for the total elementary school level, or was that just the Pine Hill? Do you recall that?
So
slide?
the number 68 would have been the differential between the census and the actuals for FY24.
Okay, so difference in which way? So the actual is 68 higher?
Yeah, I mean, the numbers that, I think Bill has them on the slide there. So 157 was what was in the census last year, and 225 is what actually enrolled in FY24. And that delta is 68 students.
And do you know how many of those went to the Pine Hill?
Not offhand, I could pull that number. It's 4 sections worth, so it's give or take somewhere actually around probably 68 or 70, somewhere in that range.
Okay, thank you.
But you also haven't realized the full movement to the Pine School because the kids that are in Downey that are gonna move and some of the other places haven't moved yet. So next year, at the beginning of the year, would be a better indication. Any other questions I can't answer?
You're doing great, Bill.
Aren't you glad you came, Tim?
It's actually,
Special education. So, you know, we've talked about this before, but from a focus standpoint, really, we're focused on district-wide programs that allow us to keep our students in district. So as we focus on fiscal year '25, really about maintaining current programming and services, meeting our responsibilities and providing that robust program to keep kids in district. So looking at the SPED budget from an out-of-district standpoint and then from a transportation standpoint, you can see, you know, and you can get variation a bit year to year based on the kids, but an increase in the day tuition's kind of the biggest driver here, and then just based on moving of some kids, you know, a decrease in residential collaborative, which kind of led to the overall reduction of about 200K. And then, you know, kind of the big up driver is certainly transportation. We see that all over the place, that transportation increasing year over year, both in district and out of district, about 250K. And so kind of just to highlight what accounts for the changes year over year, that increase in special education tuition transportation was about 86K. The OSD, the Operational Service Division, kind of sets those tuition cost increases. It was at 4.69% this year, on top of the historic 14%. If you remember, we had last year, and historically, it's always been 2 to 3%. So that's, 2 years where you're moving 20%. When you move that in the prior maybe 8 to 10 years. So it's a pretty big swing from a cost standpoint, that us and other municipalities have had to be burdened with. And then the budget also contains a net decrease in tuition. So I talked a little bit about the residential tuition going down, the day tuition going up. Relative to transportation, there's contractual increases because we're in multi-year contracts. And this is the third year of one of the contracts. There's also a little increase in professional development. And then we also got an offset due to some solar revenue as well.
Was there a difference in the circuit breaker between this year and last year?
In the what?
The circuit breaker from the state, is there a difference in funding?
I don't think we know that yet. Isn't it too early for that?
Yeah, we don't really know what we're getting
Yeah.
in terms of, like, a percent of what we apply for through circuit breaker is funded annually, and typically it is 75%, funded at 75%. That's not a guarantee.
But, okay.
And then we can skip capital, and then I'll just hit quickly on future priorities. And Tim talked a little bit about this last month, but obviously some of the priorities focused on as we look ahead in the coming years. A lot of it's going to be impacted by that new kind of vision strategy, as well as that master facilities plan that Tim talked about, that we're releasing soon. But overall, focused on additional preschool class, how do we support folks more from a wellness and health standpoint, data analysis, as well as some additions at the high school relative to science and career counseling. So those are just some of the priorities as we look ahead, but I think a lot will come out of that master facilities plan in terms of what we need to focus on.
No, thank you, and I know that Caitlyn's out sick, and your other member couldn't be here because he's no longer with us. But anybody have any other questions?
Any other questions I can't answer?
Okay, I have one issue I'm going to raise, and as I said at the beginning of the meeting, and I don't expect, I actually was not expecting you folks to be here today, but you do not have to, I'm not expecting you to answer these questions today. As I said, we're going to be sending in a request. One of them is, now that the Pine Hill School is completed, one of the things we're going to ask for, even if it's estimated, what are the estimated final costs of the Pine Hill School, and what's the estimated additional amount of borrowing we may need to do? I know how much we've borrowed, but I think, as you know, I've been very concerned about the amount of debt service that Westwood is incurring. We have borrowing articles here, and there's some other capital projects we're going to talk about. So one of the requests we will send in, it'll probably go to, I guess we'll send it to maybe the select board, and let you decide how, or Tim, Stephanie, or Chris, how you want to handle it. But I really want to get a sense of what's the final cost, what's the estimate for state reimbursement, and how much left do we have to borrow. So that will be coming in from us.
George, can we get that as compared to the initial budget?
Yeah, if you want to compare it, yes. But I really, what I'm trying to do, I think we borrowed somewhere around 55 million, and I know we should be getting about 17 million from the state, and I know the project cost is somewhere around 87, but I just need to understand how much more we have to borrow and when we're going to borrow it, okay? Because I'm very concerned about the impact on, frankly, the debt service.
Chair Hertz, Mayor Plotkin's actually going to give a presentation on that topic on Thursday school committee, so we can share that with you, but it'll be public.
Tony, thank you. Is that going to be the final cost, or in borrowing, or just the cost?
Pretty much both, yeah. She's going to we have a presentation, so we can share that with the committee. So.
That would be excellent. Okay, all right. Thank you. We'll still send the request in, and if that answers it, that's fine. Okay, thank you, Tony. Tony, is that presentation going to be part of a school committee meeting?
Yes.
Yes, on Thursday.
What time is that?
6:15.
Okay, is it gonna be televised or not?
It's going to be, it's actually going to be recorded, so it will be recorded, but they don't have the software up to live stream, but it will be recorded for future
If I
viewing, so,
can't, all right.
yeah.
And we'll try and, if you could get that to us after it's done, be most appreciated.
Of
Okay?
course.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions? Mike, you're on for your subcommittee, which is, let me think here, we got it
Public
right,
safety.
public safety.
Great. Okay, so public safety, which is comprised of police, fire, and DPW. Just a quick overview of what we're tasked to do. We are asked to meet with all of the department heads, which we did a couple of Fridays ago at Carby Street, and basically to align their priorities, make sure that the budgets are driving the priorities of each of the departments. We want to look at the operational metrics, look at year over year, and make sure that we're identifying any trends that may be of concern or both in the positive and the negative side, and ensure financial planning and controls are put into place to mitigate risks to the town for unforeseen expenses throughout the course of the year. We wanted to give a quick highlight on the percentage changes year over year. So with fire, the largest percentage gain of the three departments that we looked at, 10.8% increase year over year, and we'll get into the drivers of that increase. Police, 4%, I rounded up, just under 4% actually, and the DPW, 5.4%. Everyone has a lot of the details. We tried to summarize, and I am not as creative as some of the other presenters, so there's less graphs and nice pictures. But we'll start with police. So we met with Chief Silva, and overall, as I mentioned, the budget increased 3.99%. So $5.45 million for fiscal '25. It was almost entirely comprised of increases in salary. Those are negotiated increases in salary. There's not handing out of different increases or decreases in compensation. That is all collectively bargained. So that is all set in stone. The number of staff remained at 46 from fiscal year 24 and fiscal year 24 and 25. So again, no changes to the staff for police. Some of the observations that we wanted to share with everybody, there was a pretty big decrease in animal control. So if you looked at the budget books, we had a decrease of the animal control officer. We've actually gone to an outsourced model where we're going to be coming together with other communities, and we're going to be leveraging Dedham, and we're going to be paying them for effectively a per-call type model. That actually not only saves us, the salary associated with the animal control officer, it also saves us the requirement of housing a lot of the supplies that are necessary to fulfill that job. That was offset by moving the salary for the animal control officer over to the custodial supervisor position. When they built the new police station, they effectively had a lot more stuff. That's not a technical term, but from a technology point of view, the server rooms, the different equipment that needed to be maintained, and we are very fortunate to have an amazing resource that takes care of all of that. And the responsibilities, quite frankly, are pretty large, and they were overburdensome with the previous year's budget. So we shifted the animal control officer salary into that role. Next, just wanted to make a point that there's kind of a challenge for not only Westwood but other police departments where they want to send more of their police officers to different training. However, those trainings aren't available from the state. With less training available, that increases the price. So the supply is low, the demand is high, and the prices go up. So it has kind of a double negative impact on us. We actually want to send more of our officers to get training. It actually helps morale, helps some of the qualifications that we need to do as a police department. And so Chief Silva and the team have done a really good job of getting our officers trained, but this is something that is costing a little bit more based on the environment. Next one here, we haven't increased the staff since University Ave came online. So we're keeping at the 46 total staff, and from a police officer perspective, we're at 35. This is kind of skipping to what we need to be thinking about as we go forward, is thinking about an increase to the officers on the police department. Chief Silva ideally would like 38 or 39 officers. We're not asking for that in this current budget based on the current economic climate, but that is something that we really need to consider. Many towns have a proportionate number of police versus fire, and Westwood, very, and we're all for this, increasing our fire staff. At some point down the line, we're going to have to look at our police staff as well, because the complexity of the more commercial development in the town and some of the the different development that we've talked about here as a committee does impact the police and all the calls that they're on. Next one is, this is just kind of a point of clarification. All dispatch expenses are handled on the police budget. So dispatch handles, not only police, fire, ambulatory and animal control. So that is all in one budget. And then the final one, and again, we're not trying to overstep our bounds as a subcommittee here, but on from a capital point of view, there is down the line the need to really look at the infrastructure for communication for police across the town. While the rooftop antennas that are a different warrant article in this current town meeting may address that in some ways down at the University Ave area. There is a need for town-wide infrastructure improvement down the line. So let me move on to fire. So again, the largest percentage increase that we looked at, and quite frankly of any department in the town, 10.79% increase year over year, and that in a somewhat similar way to police is largely attributed to an increase in salaries. Those salaries are primarily by adding 2 additional firefighters. It's something that we as a town, have been working towards. And in fact, last year we made the decision to fund additional overtime to add some firefighters. This year we're carrying through and we're adding those 2 firefighters to our the full year budget. Go ahead, George.
And specifically when Mike says that, it's actually adding 4 lieutenants and taking away two of the, I don't want to say entry level, but it's taking away 2 of the firefighters. Sorry.
Don't play with the machine.
Well, I was trying to turn it off. No, it's adding 4 lieutenants, which obviously are at a higher pay rate, and it's reducing the actual firefighters. So while it's a net 2, it's an increase of 4 at a higher rate. So that's why the 10.6, the 10.79 looks high, but it's because you're adding bodies.
Yeah, I mean, we're adding, just to be clear, we're adding 2 bodies. So from last year to this year, there's 2 additional firefighters. That includes the lieutenants. Totally agree. There's some promotions that we talked about with Interim Chief Lund that are part of the collectively bargained kind of elevation of
Yes.
the firefighters. So that one of the other questions we asked is those increases, those promotions. Let's say we were to just say, sorry, now's not the time, we're not promoting. Would the increases that those individuals are going to make, would that fund, for instance, another firefighter or another 2 firefighters? The answer is absolutely not. And so, it's a good thing. And then from a leadership perspective, we've got a really young firefighter staff. And so it's really important to have leadership, when they go out for calls, God forbid there's a fire. We need that leadership. So we need the lieutenants, we need, the chief. Typically there's, again, I didn't get into all the very specifics, but depending on a serious call, there's, an individual that goes ahead in a car, and there's the fire engine that would follow. They need guidance and direction, and those are typically the more senior staff. Again, we went from staff to 47. That's an increase of 2, and as George mentioned, that is comprised of, again, two additional firefighters with some promotions. The fire alarm maintenance costs continue to remain high due to the, replacements of the old alarm box technology throughout town. We saw this last year, so this is a repeat, but it continued to be kind of a number that stood out, versus previous years. I want to say that, from Chief Lund's point of view, morale is really high. Westwood is a desirable department for people that either want to make a change from their department or people that are getting into this profession. And so I'm really proud of that. I'm proud of the town for the work that they did on the contract with the firefighters, and then also the changes that we're making for Fire Station 1 and increasing two firefighters in this current budget. We're not at the numbers that we'd like to be, and so we're, certainly if we're going to look at the SAFER grant just coming out now, we're going to need to commit to funding additional firefighters so that we can get to 11 per shift. This does not get us there. This gets us close. We're making steps in the right direction, but based on the current economic environment, we couldn't fund that full coverage of 11 per shift. In order to qualify for the SAFER grant, we are going to have to commit to subsequent years being able to fully fund it once that SAFER money ends. And so that's something that this Finance and Warrant Commission is certainly going to be a part of. And then what I'd like to offer is that we'll take part in that, and I'm skipping to one of my last recommendations. We'll happily take part in some of those discussions at the earliest convenience to the town.
Mike, I have a question.
Sure.
If you want. That is on, at last night's select board meeting, on Article 2, which we'll be dealing with in 2 weeks, there is a proposal to move $850,000 from free cash over to the fire department. Of that, $800,000 is related to salary, overtime, et cetera. $50,000 is something else. So the question I have, do we have an estimate of what we're spending this year on overtime, even if it's just projected? What have we spent to date, what's projected, and how does that compare what's in the budget for FY25? I just want to make sure we're not dealing with, I was a little taken aback by the size of the transfer out of free cash when I watched the select board meeting. So one of the concerns I have is, are we properly funded in FY25? The other thing is, I too want to laud the town for what it did in the contract negotiations. I want to laud the town's efforts on adding firefighters. I'm a firefighter family, so very, very important to me, and I know Stephanie is too. But I just want to make sure, in my mind, it sort of set off a little bit of a concern. Have we built the right number into FY25? The other thing I get a little concerned about, and talk about this a little later, it's frankly using free cash. Because in my mind, free cash is supposed to be used for non-operating expenses. But if we're building in an automatic requirement to start using free cash each year to fund overtime for the fire department or positions, I'm concerned about how we're using free cash. So it's I guess, a question we can send in. I don't know if you have any information on that, but.
I'll give my take, and then we have a wonderful person, Stephanie, to fill in the gaps. Last year, the transfer of $850,000 as it relates to free cash to cover salaries, and then another $50,000 separate, but $800,000 in salaries and overtime. I believe that had a lot to do with the decision that was made in August to add additional staff through overtime and to fund it through overtime. It's a tricky question, and so in order to absolutely nail it and be perfect, you'd have to have a crystal ball on who's going to get hurt, training, different shifts and callbacks and different things. So it is tricky. There's a little bit of an art to it, and Steph, we asked that question. They look at historicals. They try to project. They feel that the current budget is a good estimation. Unfortunately, if it is under, if we're underestimating, and if there are more sick, if a bug hits, if people are sick and we're bringing in loads of people and there's injuries, it's going to be more, and that is funded through free cash. So I don't know if Stephanie, if you want to add anything to that. Great.
But I'm not sure, I guess the difficulty is, I understand that. And for example, Norwood Hospital is a disaster right now. I think if you read the articles, Stewart's going under and Norwood Hospital construction literally has stopped. So we're not gonna have a trauma center near us if we're lucky for 5 years, if gets going. But I'm also concerned about, I almost would rather see us put a number in the budget on the operating side that reflects a true estimate of what we're gonna need, because otherwise, in my opinion, we're now using free cash for operating needs, and we're not supposed to do that. So it's a fine line. I don't mind, I understand an emergency, that's what free cash is for, but this one worries me a little bit. Because I'd rather, I don't know, I mean, I think I rely on the chief or the town administrator to come back and say, look, this is what we really need for overtime. And if we're off by a few percentage points, I don't care. But that's a big number. And if we have to deal with that next year,
Give the mic.
all of a sudden, I'm very nervous about using free cash for anything else.
Yeah. I'm gonna let Stephanie field this one. I'm
Okay.
over my skis.
It's a good question, George. And I know we have been able to discuss this the last couple select board meetings. We sort of knew this Article 2 large amount transfer was coming. What's put in the fire department particular budget for overtime, and we've done an analysis, I know, even before me, the analysis was done. What's funded in overtime right now really is the normal day-to-day operations overtime. What we can anticipate, which ends up being an Article 2 transfer, at least historically the last couple of years, has been things such as the impact of the hospital closure and ambulances having to go much further distances. Long-term outage for sick or injury, long-term leave that we cannot account for. And then a large portion of this was, back in August, the decision to, what they said, staff to 9 on all 4 shifts, day and night, 24/7. We knew that hit was coming. It was not something that was budgeted for this year. So we were anticipating, we had originally estimated between $400,000 and $500,000 just for that. I have actuals for what's been spent on overtime the current fiscal year. We used that, we did an average per month, and we projected that out. So this is a pretty decent number of what we're anticipating needing to close out the current fiscal year. And we've talked about this with the board on a number of occasions, that you probably will see a similar type hit in FY25. When we're doing the FY26 budget at the next town meeting to close out FY25, because we're adding 2 firefighters, which will help, hopefully, reduce overtime costs. But if we're still staffing to a certain level that is not currently funded with the overtime, we're only adding $100,000 in overtime for FY25.
But since we know it's gonna happen, Stephanie, in other words, the $400,000 or $500,000 was spent by overtime to meet the select board's proper decision to make sure we had 9 all the time. If you're either gonna do that with staffing or overtime, shouldn't you build that into the operating budget?
That is the plan moving forward. It needs to be a tiered approach. Hopefully, as you mentioned, the SAFER grant, I know that's being worked on right now.
So what I'm hearing here is you anticipate, and Stephanie, I understand it's a policy decision, you're anticipating there will probably be another hit on free cash in next year's budget to take care of FY25.
That is a pretty safe assumption. I don't want to say for sure, but it is something that has been discussed with the board.
The only guidance I would give is I would say this commission has to take a very, very careful look at funding anything else from free cash, because that makes me very, very nervous. And I guess the other question I was hoping to be able to ask the question, why can't we use free cash to reduce some of the borrowing articles here? Because we're very interesting. Lauren had to make a presentation in front of the high school, and one of the questions always comes up, and it came up from the students, what are we doing to reduce taxes? And it's made me think a lot about it. So all I'm saying here is, I guess we gotta watch this very, very carefully. So I would say that I would be somewhat reluctant to see us utilizing free cash beyond what this is, because I'm assuming we're gonna need this next year in these articles, because any other use of free cash makes me very nervous. We also use free cash, by the way, along with the ARPA funds, to fund the study for the police station, for the fire station, right?
For the design piece, yes, 2.1 million was used for that.
Wow, so we're really using up our free cash.
We had a lot.
Well,
Well,
I
yeah,
think we're spending a lot of it.
But that's the point, Mr. Poreda hit it. Perhaps we were slightly overfunded with free cash.
Well, whatever the issue is, I would just say we need to be very, very careful. Maybe we have to have a forecast of free cash, but let's be very careful beyond the articles here that are using free cash would be the guidance I would give. And Stephanie, I totally understand. I mean, I respect, look, I like to, I'm anxious to see the proper sized fire station go in. I'm a deep believer in having paramedic firefighters, not just firefighter EMTs. And, you know, I think Westwood does have a wonderful reputation. But I just, being the budget guy, I sort of like to make sure we're fully funded. Chris, I didn't mean to, you wanted to say something?
No problem. Thank you. I just want to expand on what Stephanie said regarding how this account is used, as far as this article is used for the funding of the overtime, unknown. We put together a proposed balanced budget. What you're suggesting, if I'm hearing you correctly, is to increase the budget, thus cutting other services for, well, that's what you would have to do in order to get what you're looking for. To increase, if I can just finish, to increase the overtime budget, we would have to use reoccurring revenue to do that in the proposed balanced budget. If, in order for us to do that this year, we had to reduce the budget request by approximately 1.1 million. What we're saying here is we have in the budget what we anticipate for normal overtime. We have proposed an increase of $100,000 for the fire overtime budget for the next fiscal year. We will continue to look at that to increase that. What this article does for town meeting is this is to address what's happening in the current fiscal year. So we're not using free cash at the beginning of the fiscal year. We're using the free cash to close out
Chris,
the accounts in the current fiscal
I
year.
have to take exception to what you just said.
Okay.
It's your job to produce a balanced budget. So don't put me or this commission in the position of saying, I'm raising an issue and therefore I'm suggesting you may have take cuts in other areas. That's your job, not mine. You're supposed to, let me finish. You're supposed to bring a balanced budget forward. What I see you doing here is frankly, you're not able to balance the budget, in my personal opinion, unless you use this free cash mechanism to cover needs in the fire department for FY25, and you're telling me you're gonna do the same thing in FY26. That needs to be disclosed to the town residents so they understand what they're supporting. I actually think if you're planning to use free cash to support operating needs, it's a misuse of free cash.
We're not planning to use the free cash.
I already was told you were.
We don't know what the amount is. It's for the
Chris, I don't want to get into this. You've already told me you're using 800,000 this year.
Yes.
And I've told that we'll probably need to do an FY26.
Yes.
So you're going to be using free cash, unless you're going to use some other source of revenue I'm not aware of. But it's your job to produce the balanced budget. It's our job to make a recommendation to the town meeting to understand what they're approving here. And to be very honest with you, I see potentially an underfunded budget. Let's leave it at that.
Can I make one more comment?
Yeah.
So if part of the reason that you keep coming up underfunded on overtime is the fact that firefighters have to go on long ambulance calls because we don't have Norwood Hospital, we know that. That's not an emergency anymore, and that's not going to be an emergency for next 5, 6, 7 years. So we need to build that into our operating budget. You can't use that as an excuse as that we didn't realize it, because we do realize it.
We're not using it as an excuse, we're using it as a fact. But what we don't know in July is how many additional runs they're going to have, or how many recalls we're gonna have. That's what we have in the budget as far as the proposed, for the overtime. What I'm hearing is, what I'm hearing is this, what we're proposing in Article 2, what was discussed at last night's select board meeting. If I'm hearing it correctly, George, it should have been anticipated, and the expectation from the FinCom is that we should be proposing a proposed balanced budget that includes that amount. Is that fair?
I'm saying that's a decision for you to make.
Okay.
Right, but
Thank you.
you have an obligation to produce a balanced budget, okay? If things are really tight, and it means the town does not want to go for an operational override in front of town meeting, that's a decision we're not a policymaker, okay? What concerns me is I see you using free cash against our policy on an ongoing basis that's starting to support operating needs, okay? And Chris, what I would say to you, if you need more money, to fund operations properly, then you gotta be prepared to go in front of the town and say, we need an operational override. Don't look at us, okay? We're not telling you what to fund or not fund. Any other questions?
If I may, getting back to Mike, do you have, for both the police and the fire, do you have a number of call volume?
Yeah,
Are they,
they gave a great,
Yeah. So we do, actually, it's in the book.
it was an awesome, it was
Yeah.
pretty impressive statistics. I was shocked. I mean, it tells you how many calls, what happened, differentiating between the type of calls. I mean, for police, aggravating assault, shoplifting, felon, I mean, it was
does it give a geographical location?
Westwood.
Yeah, no. So,
Islington.
Well, everybody blames Islington for everything, but I'm
Exactly.
guessing larceny is somewhere in University Station.
So no, to answer your question, they didn't give a geographic breakdown of that. But no, it's in our budget book. It's actually, and then we dove into some of those numbers to see if there were any trends.
Yeah.
One of the things that we didn't get was current year to date and projections. So you'll just see that it was 23 and didn't have fiscal year 23 and it didn't have fiscal year 24. It's one of my recommendations is to get a little bit more insight into the previous year, because we're pretty far along at this point.
Right, so to jump on that, are we, the fire department, police department, are they meeting their call obligations, their volume, or are we looking to mutual aid?
Well, we are. There's always potential for mutual aid. We give it and we get it.
Right, but are we relying on it?
We are not relying on it. From what we were told by Chief Lund, there are certain towns that leverage it, and one in particular the most, which is Dover, and that's because they have a volunteer fire department, and so we have the most calls there. But then we get significant mutual aid from Norwood and other towns. So it's one that we really pressed on, because if the Dover residents are paying less taxes and then we're effectively funding their fire department and making their citizens safe, is there some sort of way that we can get some funding from it? There's a nuclear option of opting out and saying we're not going to come, but that's not what we stand for, nor the fire chief.
They also mentioned, I don't know if it was the police or the fire, I think it was the police, talking about a potential down the road of doing a reciprocal with Dover, and we would get funding for that, because we would be the dispatch, I think it was the dispatch center for Dover, and we would get some funding from there.
I disagree.
So I think that's basically what you're talking about, getting assistance from another town, but we're giving the assistance, but we're getting financially reimbursed.
Well, I just want to make sure Westwood's meeting its obligations. I mean, it's nice to have help from other towns. I don't want to be reliable, dependent on other towns. To that end too, we as the capital committee, with Todd from the DPW said there is a similar program with them, the DPW and other towns.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, again, we spent probably more time on this than any other, with respect to the mutual aid. And again, it's a thing that, we feel, Chief Lund feels really good about the service we're providing. The additional firefighters is gonna make it even better, and then ultimately when we can get to the 11 per shift, that will obviously improve it. There are circumstances, and you'll probably see it on the, on social media, where, we're fully deployed. Our different stations are responding to different events, and we do need mutual aid. And just, so that will always happen even if we're at 11.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. One last thing before I shift, because I can't see without my glasses. I found this interesting that we're currently an ISO rated 3 department. In order to get to 2, there would be effectively 2 things, potentially more, but 2 key things that we don't have. One is to have an investigator, a fire investigator, and the second will be to get to that 11 staff per shift. The interesting thing as a homeowner, if we are an ISO 2 rated fire department, potentially the rates will go down from a homeowner's perspective. So one little thing that if we achieve that and we're spending a bit more money to get that certification, you may see some positive impact as a homeowner.
For those of you who don't understand what ISO is, it's the way the fire departments are rated nationally. Of the 10 or 11 or 12,000 fire departments in the country, there's only 300 or 400 ISO level 1s. And it really is, the community basically invests very, very heavily in their in their fire response. It's also the amount of time out of the station, how fast you're on scene, and how quickly you can respond. And frankly, except for the big cities like Boston, I think Cambridge, I'm not sure if Newton or Brookline are ISO 1.
Newton is.
But generally, it's in those parts of the country we have a county-based system, because they can dispatch a lot of resources on a county basis. It's very, very hard for individual towns. So frankly, if Westwood could go from ISO 3 to ISO 2, that would be quite an accomplishment.
Mike, does the fire inspector have to be an employee of the town, or can it be somebody we contract with like we do with the animal control officer?
I don't know the answer.
Cr-
I think that would be I think that might be a Chief Lund question. Yeah, so I'll take that and get an answer. I mean, I would guess that it has to be an employee of Westwood, but I don't know.
Chris, do you have any idea?
I,
How about a combination?
Because we don't have as many fires as, we couldn't keep a fire inspector employed. Thank goodness.
well, I mean, so this would be one scenario where potentially you could have one of the existing staff that
Yeah.
might
Good.
achieve it. But again, I'm guessing, I looked in their general direction and they weren't jumping to answer it, so I figured that this was a Chief
Yeah,
Lund.
it could be
question.
an additional
All right.
duty of a
Let
president.
me, let me forge ahead for the sake of time. DPW, so we met with Todd and his staff. You know, from a overall complexity of budget, this probably was the most complex because there's so many different elements to the DPW budget. With that said, it was, you know, extremely clean from a year-over-year perspective. You know, the salary increases comprise the majority again of the budget jump of 5.37%. You know, one of the things that Todd and his team have done is they've proactively gone after grants to supplement, you know, in many cases capital needs, but you know, they don't just sit back. So he's actively going out and finding money to address the needs of the town. Todd shared that we have probably one of the best fleets from an equipment perspective in the state, and he's really proud of that. One area of concern, and I'm jumping around again because I can't see without my glasses, one area of concern is the white building, which is effectively the headquarters of the staff when they're not out taking care of the town and keeping us safe. It's not in, you know, it's not in conditions that any of us would like to be on a regular basis. One bathroom, fairly rundown quarters. So there's some different things to look at in the future. This may be a capital item if we were going to rebuild, or there may be some shifts where, as an example, you know, Deerfield is returned to the town from the school department, and you know, theoretically you could move the services that are being managed out of Harvey Street to Deerfield, and then potentially have that be the headquarters of the DPW. So there's some different things that I think, from a morale perspective, Todd and his team are amazing, and they keep it a place where people want to go and work, even with the white building being a really crummy place to have to call your headquarters. Let me see if there's anything else here. Definitely, please look at your trash. So we will get hit, your recycling, excuse me. We will get hit with a $25K increase. That is not in our current budget. Stephanie will find somehow, some way to fund it, but that shouldn't be dollars that this town is spending. You know, so again, we've done so much social media. There's videos. Everyone was mailed flyers. Please try to prevent contaminants from going into our recycling. Waste Management, they're a wonderful company, but they will charge us here in the next few months if we continue to have the contamination levels. And then finally, let's see, that's it, I covered everything.
So I just want to say one thing, that kudos to Chief Silva and to Acting Chief Lund in terms of how they run the departments, and kudos to Todd. I don't know, those of you who haven't lived in town as long as I have, but 20 years ago when there was a snowstorm, it would not be unusual to see a front-end loader with a plow attached to it trying to plow the streets. I think the town made a very, very good commitment to upgrade the fleet on an ongoing basis. But I think kudos to Todd, because they take tremendous pride in what they do. When you drive through, thankfully we haven't had a lot of snow the last 2 years, you drive around this town, you go into Needham, you go into Wellesley, you go into Dedham, it's like a world of difference in terms of the way they take care of it. So at some point in time, someday, I hope we can give him a modern facility to operate out of. I'm sure it's a long way down the road. He always requests it, but he always makes do with what he has. So I think we're very, very lucky to have three excellent department heads for police, fire, and DPW. I didn't mean anybody else have questions, Chris?
Mike, as I recall, there's an article proposing a change to the animal control bylaw. How is that going to be consistent with having our animal control officer being fulfilled with mutual aid with Dedham?
So it's not related, we asked this question.
Okay, good.
So this is effectively enforcement of fines. There was no change to the, as we've talked about, there was no change to leashed and under control, it just needs to be under control. So there's some nuances there, but really it's just an enforcement and from a fines perspective. Police officers, you know, can enforce those fines, or if there's an animal control officer, they could enforce as well.
No, I meant that the bylaw has a definition of who the animal control officer is.
Okay.
And I'm not sure how that dovetails with the fact that our animal control officer now is somebody from Dedham.
No, that's not true.
No, I mean, it's a technical legal question, and I actually don't know the answer to it.
Okay.
If there's changes in the, you know, in the language of the bylaws to reflect effectively an outsourced officer, you know, I actually don't know the answer to that question.
I think they're not getting rid of the animal control officer, they're consolidating it with the custodial officer in the building.
No,
They're outsourcing.
No.
We're outsourcing.
They're outsourcing it.
Yeah. So we shifted the funds
I was on the committee.
from the animal control officer, and that is now
Funds were shifted and consolidated.
shifted over exactly to the custodial supervisor. And so it's a technical question from a bylaw perspective. I don't know the
We'll
answer.
ask that question.
But, Mr. Laham, you agree now we're not using the custodian as an animal control
Yes.
officer? Okay.
I should have listened when I was on the committee.
I believe the next one is.
Mike,
this,
one quick
okay.
last question, sorry. So I noticed that DPW was a 5-point-something% increase. You know, schools, police was less, I understand. Is there more staffing driving the 5%? Or is it just pure salaries?
From a DPW perspective?
Yeah, because it was a little higher, taking aside fire, where there's 2 new people, it's a little higher than everywhere else. I was just curious.
So they're again, mostly salaries as well, and they've got, you know, a fairly large staff. And then there was also, there were some additional line items throughout the budget. Building maintenance is something that, you know, hit across the board.
Okay.
So those incremental
Yeah.
hits, you know, added up to, instead of it being, you know, just under 4, you know, just above 5.
Okay, thanks. No, that makes sense.
Stephanie, sure.
The 5%, was that possibly something about the salary increase in particular?
Yeah, that's his personnel.
The salary for DPW increased by $110,000 for new position, but it was decreased by the same amount on the expense side.
For contract.
We're bringing HVAC services in-house. So we reduced the contracted services by the same amount that we're adding on Seth. So it might have just been the salary increasing 5 and the total, I think DPW overall is more like 3.
Okay. That makes sense.
Thank you.
So overall, 3.8, okay, the book might have been out of date. Yeah, but I mean, again, tight budgets, all three.
Yeah.
I mean, while fire was a bigger percentage, when you actually get down to what comprised that, it's actually, you know, well-run, well-governed budget.
Thank you, Mike. Excellent
Thanks, Mike.
presentation. Okay, moving along to municipal administration. And I think the burden falls on you because your
Yes, sir.
partner has left.
My pleasure to cover.
Thank you, George.
That's all right. I agree with you.
Just to think I knew what I was doing.
Yeah, right. We caught him with the hand in the cookie jar.
I don't think I'll be that awarded.
Okay. So I think due to the font change, they may not read too clearly on the slides, but if there's anything that is too distorted, we can provide a more legible copy. I'm not sure how that happened, probably in the transmission of the document. Anyhow, the scope of the subcommittee's review was the municipal administration, and that includes the areas of focus that are numbered on that slide. I won't read them all, there are 19 of them. So, what was in scope is only 20% of the full municipal budget, which was covered elsewhere through the public safety and other subcommittees. So we're only focused on general government and human services, which together comprises 6% of the entire town expenditure. So it's a fairly small operating center. The municipal budget itself is roughly split equally, 50-50, between the general government and human services. And you can see there the composition relative to the full $25 million municipal budget. So the general government is about 3.4 million, human services roughly about the same. What you can see over to the right is the increase from FY24 to FY25. What's important is the average, which is about 4 1/3%. One budget increases by 6.1%, the other one by 2.6%, but that's largely because some of the resources are being shifted from human services to general government. Okay. So the vast majority of the budget overwhelmingly consists of salaries, and so the delta between 24 and 25 is going to be raises in personnel changes or changes to salaries. So a couple of things that were done generally by the municipal administration. They identified areas that they wanted to cut or maintain with regard to previous budget cycle without impacting core services. Some training expenses were reduced in order to keep the budget contained. The supplies and expenses in travel are relatively trivial with regard to this budget, so there are no increases in those line items. And headcount requests were generally denied with just a few exceptions where there was significant need. So you can see in the right-hand column on this slide, some of the percent changes are large, but both in positive and negative directions, which shows just the shifting or the movement from one area to another. So, for example, the finance department is a newly created department. It used to be under the select board, so you can see the dollar change, which was reduced by about $260,000 in the select board line, was shifted over the finance department. There were some other areas that were reduced, and those were absorbed into the finance department. On the next slide, this is just showing the responsibility areas in greater detail. I'm going to skip over the next one. This shows the subcomponents of the net change, which for the full change from fiscal year 24 to 25, just under $200,000, and you can see 123 of it is salary and obligations and adjustments. So that's that 4 1/3% year over year, which which is in line with inflation as well as in line with what other departments are seeking for like changes. The other changes, plus and minus, are, as I said, shifting from one responsibility center to another, and in some cases, reflective of slight increases in demand, such as new positions or overtime, or in the case of the town clerk, reflective of a cyclical phenomenon with regard to elections, this being an election year. There are some call-out boxes that explain the changes. You can read those. No sense in spending too much time on them. Fairly self-explanatory. Okay. The previous several slides showed the general government, which showed the 6% increase. This slide shows the human services budget, which shows the 2.6 increase. So what I was referring to as 4 1/3% being the average of the two. Okay. Significant departmental adjustments, veteran services, that's one of the areas that was shifted from human services to general government. And then youth and family services. Demand is increasing on the town, and so this line item was increasing as a function of that. Public library. Yeah, sure.
On youth and family services, so the way I read this, the schools are referring more students with issues to youth and family services. Youth and family services is going to lose its ARPA-funded position. So that seems to be a little bit of a concern to me, that we have increased demand, but we're basically reducing services. Am I reading that right?
So, yeah, I think in general, the demand on the town is increasing, and ARPA funds do run out. So that is a conflict.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so there's a restructuring in the way the public library is modeled. So the basic gist of it is the shift went from more part-time staff to more full-time staff. And so that's reflected in the budget. The head of technical services was shifted, and this is more of what we described before, where it's the same resource but just moved from one responsibility center to another, so it doesn't have a large impact on the budget. As we know from previous items addressed at town meeting in 2023, there was an attempt to shift the appointed treasurer, shift the elected treasurer to an appointed one. And so that's still making its way through legislation and awaiting approval. So nothing has changed in that regard, but there is the possibility, as we've been alerted to the fact previously, that there could be a full-time position that hits the budget in a subsequent period. Okay. These bullets were largely addressed already through previous comments, so I don't want to be redundant here. So in summary, the subcommittee, let's be frank here, the vast majority of this budget is salary driven. And so the conversation shifted toward resource allocation and utilization. We asked some questions of the administration with regard to, you know, using technology and innovation to reshape roles, taking advantage of attrition, to explore how roles evolve so that they're more efficient. The administration, I think, to the subcommittee demonstrated that that was a priority of theirs, and they had already taken measures that took advantage of certain elements of innovation and took advantage of retirements and you know, considered the skill levels that they were losing versus what were needed. And so I think they convinced the subcommittee that they were fairly responsive to a changing environment, and I thought that that was a good thing. We acknowledged and commended that. We also learned from the administration that there were efforts to explore regionalization. I think it was alluded to in the public safety presentation where there was a discussion about dispatch services and how Westwood's dispatch services could be leveraged by other towns in exchange for funding. And I think Molly cited a research initiative to consider the wireless communication tower and that expenditure being potentially augmented by other towns that may leverage it. So the subcommittee thought that that was a prudent thing to do, and encourages the administration to explore additional sources of regionalization or regionalizing, but with the caveat that that could create or reduce redundancies, which could create concentration risks. So to just do it with caution. Yeah, that pretty much summarizes it. Any questions or comments?
One question for you. You, under the shift to appointed treasurer, tax collector, you referenced the discussion we had in FY '23 or the review. Has any funding been built into the budget for that position?
To my knowledge, no. Yeah, that's correct. She's shaking her head in agreement.
So it's
No.
leaving it as is right now? Okay. All right. Any other questions?
George, in the overall general government budget proposal, I see the offset from the select board department of 260,000. There's still a pretty good delta between the increase for finance department and the adjoining departments and the reduction for the select board. Did you get any feedback on what's driving that variance?
So there were other positions that were moved into that area. So it absorbed positions that were removed from other responsibility centers, but also incorporates you know, salary adjustments and so forth. So that's why on the net, the entire budget change is about 4 1/3%, which tracks the inflation change.
Okay, thanks.
Mike, do you see next year a possibility that both the Community and Economic Development Subcommittee and the Municipal Subcommittee could meet at the same time with all of the budget people to get the budget stuff out of the way? And then the Community Economic Subcommittee could meet separately with Nora on planning board articles, but the budget stuff would all be, that would seem to address the concern that the town has about, you know, meetings with the same people several different times. Is that a possibility?
Which seems to be, you know, definitely an avenue for efficiency, absolutely. Yeah.
All right.
All right, so good proposal.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Alex, you're up.
Thank you. All right, so unfortunately Kristina couldn't make it tonight, and she did a lot of heavy lifting on the slides. Or is it a different presentation? So Kristina did a lot of heavy lifting on the slides, so unfortunately she's not here to present her work, and I will do my best to get through it. But I think net-net, in light of the time and the dollar amount relative to the broader budget. Community economic development and its sub-departments, which are conservation, planning and housing, zoning and licensing, community economic development itself, building and health. So those sort of 6 subgroups only comprise about $1.4 million or so of budget, which is smallest by a large stretch from any of the budgets we've gone through tonight. So I'll do my best to keep this brief. I think from a top line standpoint, this budget for all intents and purposes is flat year over year. I think it's up technically 0.3%, which is a matter of $3,700. So there's not a whole lot of large things in terms of dollar figures to go through. Kristina and I did go through each of these sub-budgets line by line. We sent some questions over to Nora, who was kind enough to provide some very thorough responses. It related to questions about some increases that looked above average in terms of salary from one year to the next. But she was explaining that some relate to contracts, some relate to sort of step increases, and other relate to the way that departments have been reorganized to change staffing levels. Maybe somebody more senior losing somebody less junior. So net, not a huge meaningful increase across the board. In terms of the highlights on the budget, 2 of these departments, which are the building department and the health department, make up collectively just short of 60% of the total budget. And the building department did see the greatest decline year on year of budget. So they actually had a net decrease in budget request year over year. This was attributed to 2 major things. One was the change in the reorganization of the group, but also we've seen a decline of building activity, which is probably very consistent with what we're hearing and seeing with the real estate market. So there's less building, which requires fewer building hours, fewer inspection hours, and so that does lighten the burden from a budgetary standpoint across people hours, as well as cost of mileage reimbursements, things like that. So I'm going to sort of go quickly through here. Our subcommittee is really focusing on the planning board articles. We spent a lot of time on that, but we did cover this budget in detail, line by line, like I said. But there aren't any major outliers I think are worth really calling out here. So I will go through pretty quickly, and feel free to hold questions to the end or ask them in between. I'll do my best to answer. Luckily, Nora has joined us in the room after the planning board meeting, so she can also help out and fill any gaps as necessary.
This might be a first that the FinCom is going longer than planning board. So this is shocking.
So in terms of the conservation, they have a lot of responsibilities, but there's a lot to do with the wetlands and conservation land management in town, and they continue to do that work. But again, a fairly small department. I forgot to mention that most of these budgets are salary. There's very few operating expenses, especially as a percentage of the whole, that appears in this broader budget. I'll flash through the budgets again. If you have questions, please feel free to speak up. Department of Community Economic Development, Planning and Housing. This has been a particularly active group in town with some fairly recent new hires who have driven quite a bit of impact. They are tackling a majority of the Mumford special permit, which is planning board article that has the most meat going into this town meeting. And so they are looking at all the different requirements coming down from the state law and trying to seek compliance in the most efficient way possible, without overburdening the town's resources and overburdening some of the concerns that residents have going into this project and the compliance that deals with it. So they continue to work on University Station, continue to work through some sustainability and climate related initiatives, and then obviously the MBTA Communities Act, which is the big one that's taking up a lot of time and mind share at the moment. Zoning and licensing, so obviously pretty self-explanatory. They're working on all the different applications and permitting that comes through, a request for license modifications, and they've got some of their statistics in terms of what they tackled over the past year, and they continue to serve the town in a variety of ways related to their discipline. Community economic development, again, there's a lot of what Nora and her team are working on, which are the MBTA Communities Act, continuing the Islington Center revitalization, some of the initiatives around the OED Baker House that came up at last town meeting, and then ongoing projects, again, still Islington, MBTA Communities, and University Station, as well as seeking other opportunities for improvement around the town, where opportunities arise with either turnover of property or ability to rezone and add amenities to the town. Building department, also fairly self-explanatory, but they conduct, all of the inspections in town, including obviously the new Pine Hill School, so they were actively involved. Weekly meetings overseeing a lot of residential, but also, school-related projects over this past year. Obviously happy to see the school just recently opened, and that's thanks to the hard work of the building department and everything they did to consult with the partners constructing and inspecting all the different various aspects of those buildings. And they will continue, doing their work with any kind of residential or commercial construction jobs or efforts being made throughout the town. Health department, obviously a little bit less center stage now that we're sort of beyond the intense COVID period, but they're responsible for things like flu clinics, complying with state mandates related to West Nile virus, encephalitis, and other activities in town. And then in terms of what their ongoing responsibilities are, continue to adhere to state standards, implement food inspection programs, and obviously some of the unfortunate opioid-related epidemics we're seeing across the state, but hopefully minimizing any impact that we have here in town. That is a breeze through community economic development and its subdivisions, but like I said, I don't think it's the most, it's certainly a small part of the overall government budget. Dollar figures remain flat year over year, and the team continues to do the great work across these different disciplines. And I want to thank Nora for all the guidance throughout this process. And I think we'll especially see some of these departments come even more center stage or front of stage as we finalize some of the planning board articles.
Nora, my observation is I don't think people realize, I know when we came in and presented to us last year, but the depth and breadth of what you manage. So congratulations on getting your new planner on board. Congratulations on the new building inspector. My understanding is he actually holds office hours for people to come in, which I think is, I'm sure that a lot of the builders really appreciate that. But you've got a very complex shop you manage, so thank you for all the work. And I know we'll be talking with you on the 26th about the very complex planning board articles you're dealing with, so thank you in advance for all the work you do. Questions anybody else has on this? Jim?
Alex, on slide 11, you have the budgets here for the building inspection division. You have an administrative assistant salary jumping $14,000, totally out of whack with everybody else. Is there a reason for that one?
That's a great question. We raised that same question to Nora, and I would refer that question to her since I don't have that very detailed email response in front of me.
Yes,
So you might need a microphone, so just wait 1 second.
Thank you. So that position actually no longer exists. That's an error in the budget book. It should be, rather than administrative assistant, it should be building division specialist, I believe is the title. So we went from a building department that had a commissioner, local building inspector, and administrative assistant. We replaced the building commissioner and did not refill the local building inspector position. Instead, we took the administrative assistant position, eliminated that, and put in place a building inspection specialist position. We took Suzanne Hogan, who was the former administrative assistant, who's been with the department for, I think, 23 or 24 years, and has, over the years, taken on more and more responsibility and become more familiar with permitting, and she was willing to take a greater role in review of non-structural permits. So we changed her position, and with the increased responsibility, the new position has a higher salary than the administrative position, and that
So is
explains the difference.
Building inspector specialist, a totally new position?
It is a completely new position, but it's been filled. It was offered to Suzanne Hogan, who was the former administrative assistant.
So the position was kind of reevaluated then?
It was. It was. So when the building department was headed by Joe Doyle, our previous building commissioner, he had one way of doing things. And when Mike Perkins took over as the building commissioner, he reorganized the department and assigned additional work to Suzanne Hogan as the building inspection specialist that allowed us to not fill Mike's old position as local building inspector. So we went from 3 full-time staff members in that department down to 2.
Net positive.
So then actually, quick question though, then the building inspections hours, so it kind of drops from 92 to then 49, if that, like, so what's that, what was that?
So that difference is the elimination of the local building inspector position that was a full-time position that was filled by Mike Perkins before he became the building commissioner.
So it's all like tied in? then?
It is.
Okay,
It
thank
is.
Other questions? Okay, thank you, Alex.
Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, just a couple more things. I want to first of all thank all of the members here for putting their time in on the committee reports. I think it reflects a tremendous amount of work. I'll do a quick update on the charter review, and then I'll step out of the room, let Chris do his update. When we get back to old business, I want to just go through what questions we want to forward to the select board or to town management or to Stephanie to get some answers before the 26th. The charter review, I watched their last meeting. Basically, they want to stay with a universal definition of what constitutes a quorum, no special language for the FinCom. So I think the way it operates is based on those who are authorized and appointed at that point in time, that will constitute a quorum. So if there are 13 members on FinCom, it would be 6 plus 1. Okay, they want to use that, and I think there's logic to what they're doing. The second one is they reviewed the language for the appointment of the treasurer, the treasurer of the town clerk, and they want to stay with the language appointed in consultation with the town administrator. Now, I've watched Chris run some very, very effective search committees. I think Stephanie and Molly are examples of the quality of people that he, through his process, has brought on board. I don't really understand what that language means. So that's one question in my mind. I'm not quite sure what that means. In other words, in consultation with. And I think, as you pointed out to me, that's a little inconsistent with some of the language in other parts of the charter.
Yeah, I mean, the town council said we've used that language before, sort of, but not precisely. So there still might be some clarification needed as to what really is meant by the charter committee when they say we want the town clerk appointed by the town administrator in consultation with the select board.
Yeah. So I really don't have any strong opinions one way or the other. When they reiterated, I just said to myself, I'm not quite sure what that means. And maybe there'll be some clarification at some point in the future. So with that, I got to step out of the room while you do the
Just
update.
before you walk with it, can you emphasize that we get that within a reasonable time before our vote at the final draft?
Reasonable time on from the.
Their
The
final
Charter
draft
Review
on the
Commission.
charter.
Oh,
We're
absolutely.
gonna have a lot of reading to do.
What I
in our
want to do,
meetings.
Jim, under old business, I want to come back and just summarize what we want for that 26th meeting, okay? And I could.
Before the 26th.
Yeah, before, no, I understand. I couldn't.
Well before.
Let me
George,
step
George,
outside.
George, are you allowed to watch the recording of this meeting?
He could speed through this.
Oh, I can't be sitting in there, I don't get it.
You're blocking your ears. All right. I am Vice Chair, Chris Poreda, and as Chairman Hertz stated, after consultation with the town moderator, he has elected to recuse himself from all discussions and votes on any warrant article pertaining to Hale, out of an abundance of caution, even though, in my opinion, state ethics law may not require it. Before he recused himself, Chairman Hertz asked me to form the subcommittee suggested by a member at our last meeting, and I've done that. It's myself, George Maroun, and Mike Gay. And we have met once to discuss the background of how this came about, how Hale's request came about, and things that we would need to ask the select board or whoever presents an article. And let me make clear, as of today, we don't have anything before us, right? And the only reason I'm saying anything right now is because at our last meeting, the chairwoman of the select board said that we could see an article. So we want to be prepared because frankly, the time period in which we could have an article presented to us and have it properly vetted, in my view, is almost closed. But anyway, background, and you probably heard this before, but just real quick background. Before the pandemic, Hale's board met and decided that they were in some financial risk. Plus, they wanted to build up an endowment, and I'll explain that in a second, to fund some capital projects that they had in mind. Now, Hale operates as an educational institution. Therefore, Hale does not pay any property tax to the town of Westwood because of that. They also operate as a nonprofit organization, which for the accountants among us simply means that they can't move or can't retain earnings from one fiscal year to the next. So how are they going to fund their capital projects that they have in mind, or fund the extraordinary expenses, the risk of which they elect not to insure in the private industry, in the private insurance industry? And the answer is an endowment. It's a vehicle that allows nonprofits to have people donate to the organization, and then that organization can use those monies in that endowment for capital projects and other extraordinary expenses. So that's the background. Hale came to Westwood and Dover and said, we want to establish this endowment, and we want the towns to contribute to the endowment in return for a conservation restriction on the land. Currently, the land is not restricted from development in any way, shape, or form. All right, so I just want to reiterate, there's no warrant article before us, and we have no intention whatsoever of interfering with any negotiations that might be ongoing. So it's not our intent to tell the negotiators what we think. These are just some questions that George and Mike and I came up with as a preparation for whatever article might come before us. And we decided that there are essentially 3 questions to ask. But before we get to any question, any discussion about the value of what Hale is offering Westwood, the first question is it good public policy to use municipal resources to fund what is essentially a private organization's savings account? Now, we also talked about whether or not answering that question might exceed the bounds of the Finance Commission's chartered authority. And we concluded that it is within our scope of review because it involves the use of town money. And we're charged with making a recommendation on all town meeting warrant articles, especially those that would have the town spend a significant amount of money. And we understand the select board is the elected public policy board in the country, in the town rather. But we feel that we can certainly weigh in on what public policy the select board decides to pursue when it involves the use of town resources. Remember, the town meeting doesn't have to follow our recommendation. But I think, and we think, we would be remiss in our duties if we did not thoroughly vet a proposal. And especially in this case, any proposal would likely have a significant, like to Jim's point, a significant number of page document incorporated by reference. And we would need time to look at that document before we sat down and discussed it and voted on a recommendation to town meeting. That's why I say the opportunity here is almost closed in terms of getting something before the FinCom to properly vet. The second question is, can the town afford it? Where does this expenditure fall in the list of priorities facing the town? What town resources are currently being used to support Hale, and would this document require an increase in those services that we have to give to Hale? So we haven't received anything yet, and we don't want to interfere with any negotiations. But I just emphasize again that in the past, we've been left with little or no time to vet a warrant article before having to vote on it, under the guise of a quote miscellaneous placeholder article. And frankly, I think, I understand that practice. I understand when the select board closes the warrant, there may be some issues that they need to hold a place for, but I think this practice is getting a little out of hand if they expect this commission to review in a substantial document and a substantial commitment of town resources in, you know, what might be only a couple of days. I have no idea. So that's the update on Hale. We don't have anything before us yet. Of course, as soon as we do, we'll send it out to everybody so they can get started looking on it. But that's the update on Hale.
Yeah, Chris, I'd just like to add, I mean, you said in your history that this started before the pandemic, so that's 2019, 2020.
Right.
That's 4 years.
Well, at least. It may have
And
started before that.
We're talking less than 4 weeks to discuss it.
Right.
So I would.
I hear you. Loud and clear. Any other
Been
comments?
No public discussion, right?
Oh, yeah, that's the other question is, I mean, Westwood has, well, I don't want to say anything disparaging. I think that this commission would want to see what the residents at large think about this. I mean, there have been several presentations by Hale and the Westwood Land Trust on what was going on in the background of this, but I have yet to see any effort by the select board to solicit input from the town in general to see what the feeling of the town is. And you know, we as a commission would want to see that or have to do it ourselves if we need to.
Yeah, and I'll just add that, well, the original proposal by Hale started the discussions and has been kind of on the table for a number of years. Nothing is before us, and so I want to, you know, stop everybody from kind of taking what they thought was the proposal and thinking that that's what's going to come before us. You know, I don't know if that's the case. I don't think it is. I think it's going to be completely different. It will involve the town of Westwood, and it will involve Hale, and it will involve land. But everything else is TBD. So we got together and we said, what are the right questions, regardless of what is brought before us, and how do we best represent the town and make sure that, you know, we're considering it in the right way. So you know, again, great job in stating this, but we just simply don't know. And if something comes before us, we'll very quickly get it back to all of you.
Well said, Mike, thank you. Any other questions from the commission? All right. Chris, you want to add anything? I want to give you opportunity to do so. All right. Bill, would you get our erstwhile
not
chairman
listening.
back?
Cotton balls in his ears.
So I have to tell you a funny story. You may not realize this, but
The funny story is that you heard everything we said, right?
I was a real troublemaker in high school, always getting in trouble. And I had a Latin teacher who used to say, Mr. Hurt's 210. That meant I had to go see him at 2:10 the end of the day. And he would wait till all the school buses left. And he would maybe sit there. And when he saw the last bus leave, he would say, you're done. He knew I literally had a 2-mile walk, which I didn't mind doing. And I was arrogant enough, I never would back down. So I got a lot of exercise as a kid.
Being arrogant, George, I can see that.
Okay, all right. That's my story. No, thank you, guys, and it's sort of weird stepping out, but I just want to say before we finish this, what a pleasure it is to work with you, you know, this group of people. I got so much satisfaction, you know, at this stage of my career, watching you in your careers maturing and growing and all the things you've accomplished, and the fact that you're willing to put the time into this commission. And I think the town is incredibly lucky to have people like you stepping up and doing this. And I know as our future planning board member, what a wonderful addition you're going to make to that. Did you want to say anything at this point in time? I'll give you 2 minutes if you want to say anything to your fellow members or.
Yeah,
Vote for me.
No electioneering in the commission.
I just want to say thank you to everyone. I think it's been an enormous privilege and honor to serve with all of you on the Finance and Warrant Commission. I've learned so much from each and every one of you. I think you are some of the most thoughtful, committed, and dedicated people I've had the privilege to meet around this town in my time here, and I appreciate the mentorship, the guidance, and the ideas along the way. So, all that's to say, I'm gonna really miss working directly with all of you, but I have no doubt I will be seeing many of you, hopefully all of you, stay on. Hopefully see you around in the coming year, and if wherever things go, if I am successful there, my door's open.
So after town meeting, you know, we do our official pizza and beer party, which Chris and I would like to, we'll invite all of you to, and you as an ex officio member will be a required attendee, okay? All right. Okay, now with that.
But you'll have to pay.
I just want to go over, just to summarize, the questions we want to send in. I did get some clarification from Tim on the way out. Maya's going to do an update on the cost of the project. She's not addressing debt service. So I think the question I want to ask to, I guess we send it to the select board, we would like you to tell us what are your estimates on the additional amount of funding that will need to be borrowed to complete payment for the new Pine Hill School?
Remember, the project is not complete yet.
Well, I understand that they can at least do an estimate, Chris. I'm looking for an estimate. I mean, I'm sure that, well, she's going to be, I think, do an update in project,
Yeah,
hopefully an estimate.
Heaven forbid, when they start tearing down the old Hamlin School, they don't find asbestos.
Well, the only
out the
concern
yin.
I have, I know we've borrowed 55, I think we borrowed around 50 or 55 million, and I know we get 17 million from the state, but there's a delta between that 70 and the 55, and I sort of want to know, when we look at borrowing requirements, when are we going to borrow that? What's the impact going to be on debt service? So
That's a good question.
that's the way I want to ask that.
Well, didn't we already approve the borrowing amount, right? We haven't reached it. but
We haven't reached it, but they haven't issued it, okay? And so I just want to find out when are they going to do it? Because we went out at, you know, any borrowing right now is not going to be at a good interest rate. You know, so I want to make sure we build that into our, you know, our calculations.
And I guess more importantly, are we under budget or?
I'm guessing, I'm going to take a quick guess, that they're probably close to. I have not heard anything about, well, I'll try and watch it. I got another board meeting on Thursday, but I'll watch the recording the next day.
I'm going to channel, you know, conversations I've had with John Cummings. They are absolutely on budget.
Yeah. He's a remarkable head of that building committee, the school building committee.
I have
That's-
no more details than that for you, Jim, but they are on budget.
That's all I need to know.
Thank you. The other one I raised, I would like them to come before us, and I was not trying to get into, honestly, I did not want to get into a debate with Chris Coleman. I didn't even know they were going to be here tonight, but I really have a concern about how they're starting to use free cash. And I truly wish that, to me, if you're going to need X amount for the fire department, we all support the fire department, glad we're adding 2 firefighters, tell us what you need. But otherwise, this just seems to me that we're starting to use free cash the way we're not supposed to. Now, last year, we agreed to let them use it for the FinCom reserve, because the FinCom reserve is snow and ice, and that's easy to understand. This year, they're also using it for the select board reserve. So I'm starting to just think in my mind, I want them to come back, and I want to have a full disclosure and discussion about what they plan on using free cash for in this current year, and how do they justify using free cash for what I perceive to be operating issues. Does anybody disagree with the way I'm saying that?
No, I agree 100%.
They're using it as a plug slush fund. I mean,
That's the whole point. And for Chris to say to me that I was, you know, tried to turn it around on me and say that what would you want us to take cuts in the budget? I won't even go there on that stuff. That really got my dander up a little bit. But
I think in today's environment, with where taxes are and the concerns of townspeople, it's even more diligent to be more transparent.
Yeah,
That process seems a little fuzzy.
And the other thing is, to me, should the smaller borrowing articles, the 2.5 to 3 or 4 million, why aren't we using free cash for that? and to reduce debt. So they need to come in and do that.
One thing I'd like to add to that, I'd like to, I mean, again, I don't disagree that it seems knowingly going in when you're gonna leverage free cash doesn't make sense for operational budget. I wanna understand if that is in conflict with any of our financial policies.
Oh, absolutely.
It absolutely is. As a matter of fact, and they're published in the most recent update, and I tend to be very thorough, because I didn't want to, I was so shocked by that number last night that I pulled up. It basically says, look at free cash. This is the town policy. Disciplined use of free cash, prior year balance, not applied to operating budgets. Okay? It's not supposed to be applied to operating budgets, period.
In addition to free cash, there's also the ambulance account, which I think is $1.5 million.
Right.
And the hotels and meals, which
Right.
is another $2 million. That's on top of the stabilization fund
Right.
that they keep putting out every year.
Right, right. So it's just, look, I think we have a responsibility to town meeting to at least make sure the full disclosure of what's going on. And look, I mean, that's our job, our role as a FinCom.
Yeah, I mean, they've known for several years that Norwood Hospital is not available as a
Yeah, I know
trauma
that,
center,
yeah.
right? So they've known for several years that when the ambulance goes out on a run, it's gonna take a long time.
Yeah.
And for them to say that, well, that's the emergency we're funding with free cash in Article 2,
Yeah.
I find that disingenuous.
Yeah.
Well, I guess, I don't know if it's disingenuous. I think that, one of the things in operational budget, you have to sustain not only this year, but subsequent years. And so, at some point, we will have potentially, a closer, again, it might be nuanced. I want a thorough explanation of how they're operating in this manner.
Right.
It may actually be within line. I mean, we all know Prop 2.5 is a very real thing. And, while the conversation with Chris might have seemed like he was asking you to cut things, in general, that's how you're gonna get this done. And again, it's not our job to do it, it's their job.
It's their job.
However, like, we're in a very real environment where we can only raise taxes 2.5% plus growth. And so, that's the tricky part. If they're doing it above board and not in conflict with our policy, then they need to explain it to us.
Yeah, I mean, look, I hate to say it, the other issue is, and I don't think the town even wants to think about doing this, I mean, you'd have to do an operational override if you reach the point in town where you really can't afford the services. I'd rather go back to town meeting and say, look, here's where we are. My sense is, if you put legitimate needs in front of this town, most likely people are gonna support it, but we're not the policymakers. The other one I wanna ask you, the school's saying the kids have a lot more mental health needs. They're referring to Youth and Family Services. We're cutting out the ARPA-funded position. That sort of bothers me a little bit, but do you want to raise that for them to come in and explain why we're not funding that, or do you want to leave it alone?
No, I want to raise it, because the number of kids with those issues is not going down.
Right, I mean, that's sort of, I picked that up.
So where are they going to go?
Yeah.
Well, is that something that's covered under the family health insurance, and they have other plans?
No, there's a referral service, but the wait list is huge, so they can't get the kids in.
Within most.
Yeah.
This is what Bill does.
Yes,
Yes.
this is his job.
Bill,
Yeah,
oh,
it's my job. So within most health insurance plans, there is behavioral health coverage. Nowadays, it's a little different than it was pre-COVID, where you had to go brick and mortar. There's a lot of different resources, especially virtually, even for kids. There's some great programs within most health insurance companies.
okay.
Most people around here are insured by Blue Cross, and they have, a world of options, which certainly do with Aetna. So I think there's definitely resources within people's health insurance. Some of them at little to no cost. It just depends on what they're.
Okay.
So, but we need to have them tell us what their expectation is in terms of, right, we're not gonna have them referred to Youth and Family Services anymore. We expect them to use their own health insurance.
Or educate them, right, on the
Yeah.
resources that they might have that they might not be
Okay.
tapping into.
That'd be a win-win situation.
Yeah. Any other issues? No, I'm gonna rely on you to work with Victoria if you wanna send some questions in regarding the subject matter I'm not supposed to talk about, even though I live close by it.
Yeah, there's
I got too
one
much trouble.
more.
No, I don't,
The one additional one is Chris is gonna send a note in around the clarification around the reference to animal control officer in the bylaws.
Okay.
And so, Chris, you've got that.
And then if
I'll
you
get
have
that.
language you wanna add for your other committee,
Yeah.
that's fine.
but I also have to ask Stephanie about the OPEB numbers.
Yeah, and did you want further information on that on the culvert, or are you all set with that?
I'm all set with it, trying to make a point that
It seemed like we had clarity.
that should have been talked about at our meeting.
Okay.
I think it was on somebody's radar.
It didn't seem like we have clarity on the project,
Here at
though,
our meeting,
Yeah.
our subcommittee.
right?
What?
It doesn't sound like we have clarity on what the need of the project is.
Well, the need of the project is to keep the brook that's being held back by the culvert flowing so it doesn't interfere with the sewer substation and the backyards of all the people along the brook. So the need is clear. I saw that today.
Okay.
But it's been described three different ways in three different documents that I've looked at. And one of the documents says it includes work on the Stevens Pond Dam, over which a private drive runs, and I want to make sure that there's
Can I
no
ma- can
money
I-
going to,
Can I make a suggestion on this
Yeah.
one? Can we basically just send a request directly to Todd to ask for clarification on this instead of,
I will reiterate such a request.
okay, all right, reiterate the request, because I have such confidence in him, I'm a little surprised we haven't had I want to give him the courtesy of
All right.
time to respond to that, okay? Anything else that people want to add? Any other questions you want to have sent in? Okay.
Do we want to ask specifically why the high school roof is being borrowed instead of using free
Well,
cash?
I think it's a general question. I think it is, why are you not using free cash for any of these borrowing articles?
Okay, yeah.
Well, I asked that about the culvert. If 75% is being paid, it leaves us about $400,000 to borrow. Why don't we just use free cash for?
See, that's a very appropriate use of it, as far as I'm
Right.
concerned.
I mean, I don't know what the borrowing rate is, but
Yeah.
it's gotta be more than
But-
free cash.
But that to me is that's exactly what you want to be using free cash for.
Right.
All right. Okay, just to reiterate again, please get your write-ups done if you can, and get them to Victoria, because Chris and I will go over all of them. These are just basically your write-ups of your committee reports,
Oh,
okay?
The budget write-ups.
Yes. Yeah, and then
Yeah.
and then think about volunteering for which articles you're willing to do a write-up on, okay? Your committee reports need to go into a narrative form. That's what we want, okay.
look at last,
More on the write-up, like.
on each warrant article?
Like, what is the timing and stuff? Because I'm away and I'm taking this meeting on the 26th on the phone, and I can tell you from listening to one on the phone, it's hard to hear
I
half the
know.
people in the room as the voting one.
So we'll assign all the write-ups to Bill.
I know, but even when some are talking.
If you and George can hear Mike off.
Yeah, I know.
So Bill, take a look at the warrant article list we got last meeting,
Yep.
and see if there's any that strike your fancy.
Yeah,
That
can take
I
a
want
bunch
to do
of
this,
the-
I want to do that. And then we will let you know what the vote is, and then you can,
And then when are they due?
Once the
they
votes are.
will, they will have to be due within a couple of days of the 26th, because we need to get the book to the printer in order to get the book
And
out to residents
Chris and I
2
worked
weeks
along with
before.
Victoria all weekend long on going through these drafts and everything, so,
I will only have my work laptop with me until the 28th.
March
Lauren's
26th,
volunteering
right?
to do it.
Bring another laptop.
So I would say the 29th of March is when they should be
Isn't
done.
that when Easter is?
because then Chris and I and Victoria just have to
Good luck with that.
really edit everything. Okay, all right, can I get a motion to approve the minutes for
I'm Orthodox.
our last meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Can I get a second? We think we have to do a roll call because we have somebody on the phone, right?
Bill Bruce,
Yeah, it's usually a weekend.
John Carey,
Yes.
Jim Ferraro,
Yes.
Lauren Fitzpatrick,
Yes.
Seth Frederickson,
Yes.
Mike Gay,
Yes.
George Hertz,
Yes.
George Laham,
Yes.
George Maroun,
Yes.
Chris Poreda,
Yes.
and Alex Yale.
Yes.
Any questions from the public or press? No. Oh, one last thing. Chris made a recommendation that I agree with. When we do our public hearing, instead of making, I was disappointed to see so many citizens walk out because of how long the meeting went. What I'm thinking of doing, as we get through appropriate sections, open it up, let the citizens who are here, give them 15, 20 minutes, whatever, for them to comment, instead of making them wait to the very end. Everybody okay with that?
Yeah,
Yes,
that's
I think
appropriate,
that-
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. 'cause
After
I-
each part, section, they'll have their question go
Yeah,
up, any
because
questions.
I felt a little, look, at pro or con, the fact that people showed up made me feel good, but then all of a sudden, they're saying, we're not getting paid to do it, either are we, but the point is, I think we tired them out, so we'll do that next time, okay? All right, how about a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Can I get a roll call?
Bill Bruce?
Yes.
John Carey?
Yes.
Jim Ferraro?
Yes?
Ron Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Seth Frederickson?
Yes.
Mike Gay?
Yes.
George Hart?
Yes.
George Laham?
Yes.
George Maroun?
Yes.
Chris Poreda?
Yes.
Alex Yale?
Yes.
Do you know how much I enjoy doing this with you?
That's a wrap.
My wife said that.